What was that moment like coming off of, having this collection at Perry Ellis, being this young designer, and then taking this role on at this very, huge European house?
So Vuitton had become this huge luxury house, but it wasn't appealing to a young customer.
It wasn't cool.
It wasn't cool.
Yeah.
It had no cred, it had no clout, it had no nothing. What it had was this historic sort of monogram. So Mr. Arnault, this idea that he wanted someone to come in and shake it up.
Today on the show on High Low with Amrata, we have Marc Jacobs. Why I'm so excited to have you on here is because you've been somebody who has had an incredible balance between artistry and business, which is extremely rare. And you've been able to stay culturally relevant through both of those channels, through incredible business and also through your creative process for decades, which is so impressive to me. We were just talking about your grunge-inspired collection for Perry Ellis in 1992, which kind of changed fashion completely, put you on the map, and also got you fired, which I think is a really interesting thing. And then you were at Louis Vuitton, obviously, as a creative director for 16 years. And then, of course, Marc Jacobs, your own line, which you've done incredible collaborations through the years. You have continued to innovate and raise the bar. Your latest brand, Heaven, your 2023 spring collection, Heroes. I think that people overuse the word icon these days, but you are truly an icon. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Happy belated.
Very flattered.
Okay, well, it's all true. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
How does it feel?
It feels fine. I think I've decided, because I'm 60, that I should feel different or old or whatever. So I kind of made up my mind, and I think I've just done a number on myself, but I feel fine. I'm doing the same thing that I did last year or the year before that. I get up, I go to work. I mean, I probably use more hair dye than I ever have, and maybe a little bit more beard dye than I ever have. And I certainly could use a gym and a trainer, but other than that, I'm fine. I'm good. Still moving.
I mean, you definitely, it's not to say that 60 is old, but you do not look 60.
Well, I had a facelift last year too.
I want to talk to you about the
Go
facelift.
ahead. Let's talk
How
about
was it?
It was amazing. I mean, it wasn't like it was something I was dying to do. I think it was last year, or maybe it was the year before. It was 2 years ago now, I think. But Charlie, my husband, who certainly didn't need a facelift, had it in his mind that he wanted a facelift. So when I asked him what he wanted for his birthday, he said, I want a facelift. I was like, okay, well, if you do it, I'll do it. So we thought we would get a couple's facelift.
Fun.
Some couples get massages together. We thought we'd get facelifts together. So we interviewed a couple of doctors, and then the one that we fell in love with was Dr. Giacono, who is amazing. And he's become a very good friend. And we thought could he do both of us on the same day? And it really would be. And he was like, yeah, if that's what floats your boat, I'll do it, And then it turned out I couldn't do it then.
Okay.
So I did it afterwards, shortly after Charlie did. And
the recovery is intense, no?
it wasn't, though. It was also so he's uptown. I stayed at his office one night with the nurses so they could observe everything. And then I moved into the Carlisle. I mean, we did such a number. We made it so cinematic and theatrical. I bought a cheap headscarf from Zittimer, and I tied it around my face and put big dark Gucci glasses on. And
you were in character.
I just, it was all for Instagram. I just wanted to do have these images for Instagram. So I went into the hotel, and then of course during the 4 days of my recovery, I did selfies, and I did a selfie in the what is it called, that hyperbaric chamber, which was really great for recovery. I mean, it really accelerated recovery. But I had a nurse with me, and she monitored, my painkillers so that I wasn't naughty with my painkillers.
Right.
It was very, very well done. And also that I had proper attention, and then I could run over to his office and he could look at the healing. And all of it was really easy and good. And, I 4 days at the Carlisle watching movies.
I mean, it sounds fab.
It was fab.
Yeah.
And then I was really happy with the results. I was really glad I did it.
I feel like body modification is something you've always been interested in.
Anything modification.
Yeah.
You know, I just think, I don't know.
I remember when you guys had the Halloween costumes where you did the prosthetics and you were like female body. You were a female bodybuilder.
I was a female bodybuilder, and we were like kind of 1970s, 1980s. And we had these costumes made. I mean, they were all, you know, they were foam costumes that we had done by this incredible costume shop in New York who's done costumes for me before. And, you know, I just love like role play, character acting, and like creating a character and getting very into it. You know, we called ourselves Larry and Stacy. I had these fingernails, and I like my hand movements were very much who Stacy would be. Like even the Ziploc bag that I had with my makeup so that it didn't go directly in the like I got so into the part, you know. You
became Stacy.
I was Stacy for the night, yeah.
I read somewhere that you have said you could have seen yourself as a performer in another life.
Totally.
And you love theater.
Love theater, love performing. I mean, I think fashion is performance too. It's like, you know, I think entertainment has a lot of facets. It could be writing, it could be music, it could be fashion. I mean, when we put together a show and we have this runway show, you know, it's, to me, it's a 7-minute piece of live theater. You know, like it has all the emotion, it has all the costuming, it has the hair, the makeup, the casting. So what makes it different than a show? It's a show. Which I think now in this day and age has actually given you a really specific, because the kind of business side of fashion shows is faded, right? With the rise of the internet, with Instagram, you don't need to have it. The necessity of it from a business perspective is different. So it is really about leaning into the performance, which you've done so well. Yeah, I mean, I think we have a CEO at our company now who is incredible, and I adore him. His name is Eric, and you know, he speaks, he understands the importance of the runway and what we do. It's not a business in terms of dollar and cents or dollars and cents. What he expects from us is a story every 6 months or 4 months or 5 months, whatever it is. He expects a story, and one that inspires people within the company who do make the products that are commercial. So it takes, I mean, there's still just as much pressure to perform on a creative level. We don't have the pressure to perform on a sales level. Right. And I think, honestly, my feeling about high-end fashion, it should be no wastage. Like when you're making expensive clothes, you don't want to see like these dresses hanging on wire hangers on a markdown rack, you know, or overproduced or whatever. Like, so I feel that what we're doing really makes sense with the like kind of high-end fashion statement kind of idea. Totally. I'm thinking about just the evolution of magazines and how, you know, now you're talking about making images for the internet and for Instagram. And it's like this beautiful book that, you know, used to come out every month. It just doesn't have the same value. But what is happening now is that there really are beautiful books being created. And then there's sort of the other side of it, which is just a bunch of images for the internet, for Instagram, for TikTok, whatever. And I feel like you have kind of started this new model that really makes sense, that allows, you know, the preservation of this traditional type of fashion show and creative process that, you know, other brands are sort of struggling to find that balance. Yeah, I think, I mean, you know, I don't know if we're lucky or they're lucky, but I mean, there's huge brands that, or I hate to call them brands when they make a luxury product, but I hate to say product when it's luxury, you know, like all those things sound very cheap. But I guess when I think about my experience, like say at Louis Vuitton, you're talking about like this storied house that has always made luxury products. And then if you look at Dior, or you look at Givenchy, or you look at Prada, or you look at Bottega, or those brands have like such a deep history of making luxury things. And I think they've all been very wise in getting younger and more interesting designers, more creative designers, to do what they need them to do. But I think it's very different when you're not one of those like houses in Europe, you know? So like, it's very atypical. Like America or the US doesn't really have like luxury brands, you know? And I think other than like Ralph Lauren or Michael Kors, you know, we just don't have like, I mean, there's a lot of young designers who are super creative.
South Park had made me into a character called Muscle Man Marc, because I have two South Park characters on my arms. I mean, they made a very funny, sarcastic remark, and I can't really quote it properly, but it was just the fact that something as stupid as like 2 of Cartman's toys tattooed on like a fashion designer, someone who's supposed to be an arbiter of taste. Anyway, they made me into a character, so that was the last thing I had tattooed. My name is Marc Jacobs. I'm a fashion designer. What I do, answer questions about fashion, draw sometimes, sit in on fittings, choose fabrics, design bags and shoes, spend a lot of time making corrections, shows together, travel, walk my dog. That's what I do. I don't know what I want to do next. And I didn't know I wanted to be this next years ago. You know, like people sometimes, I mean, I have this gym regime and I've taken to getting my body decorated by Scott Campbell with tattoos. And I did have a different attitude about fashion. I mean, I've been enjoying it all a lot. I go to the gym in the morning for 2 hours. I basically lift weights. I do some stretching once in a while, but that's basically what it comes down to. I work out different body parts every day, and I do have a lot of conversation in between sets with my trainer, Easy, and yeah, it's not very social really, the gym, but I mean, he and I have a nice dialogue going on and have for years. But I like to exercise. I like the way I feel afterwards. It's a good way to start the day. And I start my day way before the gym, but the gym is really more than the coffee and more than the shower, it's really the thing that wakes me up. I do wake up a couple of hours before. Sometimes I watch a little morning TV, walk the dog, have breakfast, shower, put on all kinds of lotions and potions that my facial person recommends, and take vitamins that my nutritionist recommends, and I take lots of supplements like juices, natural juices, acai, goji, noni, mangosteen, all these different things, wheatgrass and ginger, and lots of vitamins and acidophilus, etc. And then go to the gym. The job that I do today between Marc Jacobs and Vuitton, I mean, I guess I do more than I've ever done before. I mean, there's perfume now, there's a Sephora beauty line that we're doing, there's just a lot more stuff. So there's more traveling and there's more of everything. There's more fittings, more choosing fabrics, more designing and directing shows, and collaborating with different people on getting everything done, from shoes to bags, knitwear to clothes to advertising shoots to, all of it. In New York, I'm very close to, this is where I grew up, and I'm close to my friends, and I don't know, the familiarity of the city feels very real to me, and what I know. And whereas Paris, like I said, is a bit of a fantasy and a fairy tale, so it always feels like I'm playing it, doing the job, rather than actually doing it. You know, sometimes I'm not really aware of how much something means to me or how important it is going forward until a lot later. It's sort of like in the end, it becomes clear all the things that played a part in the making of a collection, and they always do, especially in New York. I mean, I really feel like it's the show. When we do the show in New York, it always feels like a diary of the last 6 months of our lives. You know, I think the way I feel in New York is very different than the way I feel in Paris. I have bits of that feeling of, I guess it was funny face, where, you know, I arrive in Paris as a New Yorker, as an American New Yorker specifically, and I just sort of feel like Paris is so sort of, I don't know, mythical in a way. It's so romantic, and it's so the way I see it, not the way it really is. So my existence there is very somehow fictional in my mind. I mean, it's funny because I have friends like Sophia Coppola, who's a part-time Parisian, and she and her husband and family are there quite a bit. And you know, I've had dinners over at my house, and Sophia will arrive like in a fur coat and dressed up for dinner, and you know, she'll say, "Oh, this is our bourgeois 7th dinner," and so it's not only me. I think a lot of Americans who do get to spend time in Paris, or at least a certain group of Americans, have that sort of feeling of Paris as what we know it from movies and what we know it through books. I don't know if I'd ever want it to feel any differently, to be honest. We're stuck in the studio before the show. I mean, it's 2 weeks of kind of nonstop working, and I think it's almost like you can, I don't know, there's a strange vibration that courses through your body that tells you that everybody's landed. I think when it's over, because we show on the last day, and I think that there's the kind of come down that I feel, and again, it's probably also partially exhaustion, but there's a come down, and it's maybe in that point that Paris feels like just Paris, like the Paris of when I was a tourist or when I was a student going for the first time, that it's the time that I look out the window or take a walk, and I just sort of feel like Paris is Paris and not the Paris of a job, or Paris of fashion, or Paris of anything else. I think I use the word comfort a lot, and I don't mean it in terms of how it feels necessarily, but how comfortable the familiarity of something is. And I think that things that are asymmetric and abstract, although they can be interesting and certainly challenging, I don't find great comfort in them. Maybe that's what's exciting about them, but for me, I wouldn't say that what I love is like easy to wear. That doesn't interest me, but the comfort of familiarity, or the idea of classic, meaning that it's rooted in something classic, again, is that familiarity, and that's I guess an approach or something that's always in the back of my mind. It's sort of being able to make something believable somehow and say like, well, I can imagine someone wearing that, or someone having worn something like that, or it gives it a kind of credibility in my mind and allows it, I think, for me to let it go and say, yeah, this can exist, or this seems viable and right, and also quite easy. I recently saw a picture of two women that I'm extremely inspired by and like very much. And that's Rachel Feinstein and Cindy Sherman, and they were both wearing these sequin dresses, which happened to be one of the dresses I felt very strongly about in that show, because I felt it was nice for us to do a long dress that wasn't a mermaid dress. And then the fact that two women I really respect and I think are creative geniuses, both separately chose that dress and showed up at the same event in them. And I think those kind of things are what is most gratifying, really. I'm interested in celebrity because I'm also interested in, I think the psychological side, what makes people want to perform and what makes anybody want to do a show or write a book or be recognized for the work they create. I think this comes down to what I find very easy to talk about, which is this wanting of attention, which I think every child comes into this world wanting attention, and if it didn't get it from its mother, it would die. But I think that desire for attention reaches certain levels, different levels in different people. And so they have this absolute passion for expressing themselves. And I think that first and foremost, it comes from their own desire to create. But that also is contingent on the audience, because just to create isn't really all they want. They also want to show what they've created, and they want a response. I don't think that I ever long for anonymity, but there are moments where I'm at my happiest just working here. And again, it's not for the audience. It isn't that moment of the show being over and the applause, or it isn't for the, seeing it on Rachel and Cindy. It is the actual, it sounds really spiritual and sickly, but the journey. And there are moments where it's here and it's just us, and it's not for a video or for the camera or for anybody else. The thing is with creative people, I think, first and foremost, there's the pleasure of making, and the process of doing that and the journey of doing that is so gratifying. And then other times I just think, I'm going to have fun with this. Like when I went to the Prada Schiaparelli thing at the Met, and I decided to wear this Comme des Garçons black lace dress. And I just thought, Anna is always kind of encouraging us to get dressed up for the Met. And I thought about the two women that were being, shown in this exhibition, and how much respect and admiration I have for them. And I came to the conclusion that regardless of what the museum's point of view was about them, what I felt they shared was this fact that they were both unconventional thinkers. And so in the celebration of that, I thought, what could be more unconventional than a man in a lace dress? I'm just saying this to say that there are times where I really kind of get a spring in my step and feel like, I'm just gonna have a good time with this. I remember also about that particular event, Rachel Feinstein and I going up the stairs, and Rachel in this huge black fox portrait hat, in a May Day or something, and a satin dress, and she said, do you know who the entertainment is? And I said, I think we are.
Creative and talented, but you don't have like old historic houses like you do in Europe.
Well, I think this really brings me I wanted to talk to you about your beginning days into fashion, also just growing up in New York City and sort of performance and how that played into what you ended up doing. But, Marc Jacobs has become sort of a Central American designer in a lot of ways.
I guess it's relative. When I was in school, Parsons, or even before, when I was in the High School of Art and Design, what American fashion looked like was Halston, Calvin Klein, Perry Ellis. Donna Karan wasn't yet on her own, but Anne Klein, Halston, Calvin, Ralph, and they were the big American designers, and they all had licensees and like huge, like they were huge. Now, I don't know if they were huge in Europe,
Right.
but
they
as
were.
a kid in high school, these were like the equivalent of famous European designers, only they were American. And I think at a certain point, that just changed. Like Calvin was no longer at his, company. He sold his company, or I think he sold his company, or he left his company. And Donna Karan no longer was at her company. Like, so all of a sudden, so there was just Ralph,
Right.
or Michael. Michael Kors kind of took over.
But you said at some point, I think, like, I wasn't an American designer. I wasn't a French designer. I was just,
A designer.
yeah, which
Well-
I thought was interesting. What was it like? Give a little bit of a picture, because Louis Vuitton obviously has become something that I think was very different from when you started. What was that moment like, coming off of having this collection at Perry Ellis, being this young designer, and then taking this role on at this very, huge European house?
Yeah. Well, we can talk about this on lots of different levels.
Yeah.
So I was a nervous wreck because it was very daunting. Like, what do like, how do I do this? And again, looking at the time when this all happened, I think I have a very good, sort of take on it. I forget a lot of things, but this in particular I remember. Tom Ford was at Gucci, and he was doing this incredible job at remaking Gucci from an old, loafer with a snaffle bit to this hot brand that like Madonna was wearing and everybody wanted. And, so I know that Mr. Arnault, the head of LVMH, was looking at what happened with Gucci and saying, well, if Gucci can do that, Louis Vuitton could do it. Now, Louis Vuitton they didn't have a classic loafer. They had bags with
Right.
a classic monogram. That was what made it identifiable. So Vuitton had become this huge luxury house, but it wasn't appealing to a young customer.
It wasn't cool.
It wasn't cool.
Yeah.
It had no cred, it had no clout, it had no nothing. What it had was this historic sort of monogram. But I remember even, and I won't even repeat it. It's just not a very good thing to say. But so Mr. Arnault, this idea that he wanted someone to come in and shake it up and design and do. And
At that point, were you sort of like a bad boy? Like what?
Well, I wasn't really a bad boy. I was really a good boy.
Yeah.
I mean, well, again, this could different. It depends what you're talking about.
Personal, fashion-wise.
Right. I mean, I was very naughty in terms of like my craziness and my partying and all of that.
Yeah, you were at like Studio 54 at 15 or something, right?
Yes, but
That was a long time,
16.
yeah.
But I was less naughty then.
Okay.
So I might have been in clubs for, a lot of my youth, but it sort of accelerated my drinking, my drugging, etc. But when I went to Vuitton, I was very excited about it. And the first presentation I made to them, I was like, well, I believe that Vuitton could be menswear, women's wear, accessories, jewelry. And I kind of drew it all out and gave them examples of what like a Louis Vuitton watch would look like and what a Louis Vuitton raincoat would look like. And Mr. Arnault loved the presentation and he thought I was the right person for the job. I'm sure it didn't hurt that Anna Wintour was like totally on my side. And he, I think, really respected her opinion. So I got the job. And then that was like crazy beginning because they had no idea like that we needed sewers and we needed.
How old were you? I just want to get a
Oh God,
paint a
how old
picture.
was I? I don't remember. So you know what year I went there? Because I was born in 63.
I mean,
Well, 92 is grunge, right? So I had to have been
90. I want to say it was 90.
It's 90 something.
97. Yeah,
Could be.
January 97.
There you go.
Yeah.
We figured it out.
There you go.
So I went there and, there was my partner and I went there, Robert, who is, partner.
Duffy.
And yes, Duffy, who, started the whole business for us and
For Marc Jacobs.
and also was responsible for hiring me way before there was a Marc Jacobs brand, when I was much younger, right out of school, Parsons. Anyway, so Louis Vuitton, I'm there, we're sitting there, we start we're like in this building way out of Paris. And we're like, La Défense, it's called. And we're like, what the fuck are we doing here? And like, how do we make this work? Like, we have to find people to work with us. We have to build a team. We have to get a studio. We have to find people to sew, make patterns, etc. So we did. And then we kind of had a date for
So
like...
they didn't even have that infrastructure?
No.
Why not?
Because each of the LVMH brands operates separately. So
Okay.
Dior, remember again, Dior was a couture house. So they had an atelier
Wow.
that was started in 1948 or 50, whatever. I don't know what year it was. Like all of their other brands were used to making couture and ready to wear, but Vuitton never had it. So
Wow.
we had to go in and start it and mold it and make it. And then we had
From
our
the bottom
first...
up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it was crazy. But, you know, I ran into Peter Copping, who was there from the beginning. And he was at Steve's funeral. And Kemi Michelli, who was part of my original team. And now she does Pucci. Peter's at Balenciaga. But we were all kind of, not all of us, but a few of us were there. And they were, you know, our original team that were sitting in the Rue de Bac in an apartment, which we made into a studio. Like, it was so crazy to think that it was that disorganized
Right.
and like that.
Well, and that this kid came from America and had to like whip it
It
into
was
shape.
so naive.
Yeah.
You know, we were so naive. And then it grew, and then they owned a shoe factory, and they built a shoe factory. And, you know, it sort of evolved over 16 years.
Right.
Into this fully, you know, then we had a little...
I envy people who go to Paris for the first time. It's not that I want to redo that or anything, or that it matters whether they're 15 or 35. It's having that experience for the first time. Nothing can ever be the same as it was the first time. So whether you come into something at 15 or 50, doesn't really matter, but I think it's that first time that's really always the most magical. I think perfection's an ideal. I don't think you can ever really achieve it. There's always something to do. I mean, I keep adding tattoos and piercings and all sorts of stuff, and I don't know, maybe, you know, who knows what I'll do in the future, but I'd like to think that I'm not done. Drinking. Yeah, smoking's the best. Smoking and sleeping are the two best things in the world. There are certain exercises that are more difficult to do. I mean, like running for me is really hard because, first of all, I don't like to run, and second, yeah, my smoking habit I think probably makes it even more difficult. But I just like going to the gym, and lifting weights isn't really so cardio. That was the stupidest thing I've ever heard because, first of all, I was never a fat heroin addict. I was a skinny heroin addict, and I got over that, luckily. But I was never fat. I was fat when I stopped doing drugs, not fat while I was doing drugs. I don't know anyone who's fat when they're doing drugs. I mean, luxury is anything you don't need. I mean, we need food, clothing, shelter, right? So food, water, clothing, shelter. But I think, you know, I mean, this is a luxury, right? Because it doesn't need to look like this. I mean, good wine, good food, beautiful interiors, you know, nice clothes. Those aren't necessity. They're luxury. So it's all luxury. I mean, it would be a wonderful thing to have a private jet all the time. I mean, I know people who fly by private jet all the time, like Larry Gagosian, who is a big art dealer. He has a private jet and flies all the time. And luckily, I've hitched a ride on his plane a few times, and it is not overrated at all. It's a really great way to travel. I think. I don't know. I mean, I spend quite a bit of time doing press. I do. I spend a couple of hours each day at the gym. I spend many, many hours in the office, many weekends, many nights working on the shows. I'm always, I mean, I would say most often thinking about work. Most of my friends are somehow related to work, even if they're in different professions. There's a kind of a shared, I don't know, creative kind of approach to things. And so I don't know if I separate my personal and professional life so much because I think it's kind of all intertwined. Boundaries have been sort of blurred, and I think it's so unnecessary to put things in these boxes. And I mean, Andy was very much about this kind of concept, and in fact, Interview for the anniversary of Andy had me, you know, as Andy on the cover, and it was Glenn's idea to put me there because of this collaboration with Takashi and with Richard. And he said, would have been Andy's, dream come true, the combination of art and commerce and stuff. And Victoria was in the audience, and so I went to Jürgen afterwards, and I suggested her, and Victoria, of course, would never have been the type of person that I think someone would have thought of as our customer, And Victoria liked the idea very much, and she was totally into it. And then I said to Jürgen, let's make these shopping bags and these boxes, and let's kind of treat Victoria and she was in on it. It wasn't that she wasn't aware of it. I said, like she's a kind of product, because she's created herself. And then when the pictures came back, I think the first image we ran it said Victoria Beckham shot by Jürgen Teller, and it was just her legs out of the shopping bag. And it was so anticipated that she was going to be in these ads. It had been on all these blogs and everything. And then the first image you saw was just the legs coming out of a shopping bag. But that was Jürgen's idea. I remember when I went to Jürgen and I said I would really love to do Cindy Sherman for the campaign. And I called up Cindy and I said, Cindy, would you do this? And she said, well, I'll only do it if I shoot it. I won't be a subject. I don't want to sit for my portrait by Jürgen Teller. She said, but I'd love to do it. So then she and Jürgen, she created this whole family of characters, and she dressed up, she transformed herself as well as Jürgen into these different members of the family, and they wore this collection. And then Jürgen, we published a book which was the work of Jürgen and Cindy, and it was a great collaboration. I don't know why I brought that up. Oh, we didn't sell anything. I mean, they were, nobody would look at those ads and say, I want to look like that. I mean, nobody. They wouldn't run to the store to buy the dress, the sweater, the shoes, or anything, because, I mean, there was one, I remember the one in Los Angeles. It was a huge billboard, and Jürgen and Cindy were dressed as this old, horrible suburban couple, like sitting on a bench like that. And there it said Marc Jacobs, and I can't imagine anyone would run to the store to buy a sweater, because of the way these people looked. I like things that are wrong or imperfect, or that people may not necessarily look at as an ideal beauty or something. I'm quite, again, I've often said, my favorite artwork ever was or is the El Hacho au Cul by Marcel Duchamp, the Mona Lisa with the mustache. And I kind of, again, I love, well, I'm a big believer in the whole Duchamp sort of thinking, the idea of a urinal as a piece of art. There was a sweater we were looking at the other day, and I really didn't like it, and it sold very, very well, and so it keeps getting shown to me as this thing that, like, oh, this was very commercial. And every time I see it, I cringe, because I just think, I don't want to do things like that. I don't feel proud of them. But then, sometimes you have to close one eye and just do it.
So judge or be judged?
Usually judged. No, I'm never normally a judge, and I hate judging. And I am usually judged, as we do so many shows a year. I've got plenty of critics and people saying what they think of my work, and somehow I'm more comfortable with that than judging others.
Young and fresh or old and wise?
Oh, I think they're both good. They're really both good. Young and fresh is always exciting and new, and old and wise, well, there's always something to learn in that as well.
Smiley faces or skulls as a pattern?
Oh dear, smiley faces.
So skirt or pants? You give the answer today.
I would have to say skirt, or skirt and pant combined, which is the case with me usually. But skirt, yes.
SpongeBob or M&M man?
SpongeBob. I have both. There's a M&M here and a SpongeBob here, but I think SpongeBob, yeah, SpongeBob.
Protein shake or gin tonic?
Protein shake. I have 3 a day.
Studio 54 or The Box?
I'd say Studio 54. Studio 54 was the first and most exciting club I've ever been to in my life, and nothing will ever compare to it.
Madonna or Lady Gaga?
Magaga. Yeah, again, impossible to choose, right? Lady Gaga's Lady Gaga, and she's great and interesting and fresh, but then there's Madonna, who's old and wise.
Hamburger or tuna pizza?
Hamburger. I love hamburgers. Tuna pizza I like, but only from the Mercer Hotel. Hamburgers I like just about everywhere. I had a hamburger for lunch today.
Bench press or sit-ups?
Bench press, because, oh God, you ask such difficult questions. Well, we have to do both, because, yeah, have to do sit-ups for your abs, but bench press is easier in a way, yeah. So it's like less painful, but I do both.
Grunge or rave?
Grunge, yeah, grunge. I'm not much of a raver.
Grower or shower?
That's not tough. It doesn't really matter. They both end up in the same place. House.
A house. It's a
will
brick
be a
house, a
house.
pink
But that's
brick
just-
house.
It's a pink house. The pink house is not really indicative of anything. It's just kind of a happy place. The clothes.
Yes.
The other hand, we started talking at the beginning of the season about color, and we decided that we liked a very neutral palette, but one that was kind of inspired by uniforms, workwear, and sort of surplus clothes, because they're kind of invisible colors. And then I started thinking about uniforms and decoration, and I started thinking about anonymity and the idea of how uniforms in youth culture used to be a sort of symbol of rebellion or protest, and how, like with most of fashion, it doesn't mean anything, it's just what you wear.
Service is plain.
Flat and then decorated.
Mhm.
We looked at like badges and basically decoration, everything from Girl Scouts and brownies to army, decorations. We thought of replacing the badges and the patches with big just resin baubles that we had developed, and buttons, things that were decor on uniforms. Well, here we have this lovely young lady in a brown wool canvas bonded dress. We like shape, big shapes, small shapes, short shapes, long shapes, wide shapes, round shapes, narrow shapes, shapes. Silk sweater. You want to look at accessories? These are various shoes done in the twill and the velvet, sort of inspired by Dr. Scholl's, but of course made completely different. Pave buckles, bags, crocodile, all kind of hand painted and patinaed in different tones of the colors. And these are some of the ones I love the most. Suede and with the like genuine army cotton sort of flap. And these twill rucksacks and all inspired by army bags. And these are all the cabochons that we developed in the resin with the guipure. We developed all these beautiful guipures that are just galons. If you want to go upstairs, you can see where everybody's working
Yes,
on clothes.
let's do
but-
that.
So for instance, this is a military jacket, a shrunken military jacket, which has been decorated. And these are all the guipure trims and the cabochons and the resin and stuff like that.